let's start with the next presentation. So after that, we can take other questions also.
Okay.
Sir, you can start your presentation.
Okay. Welcome to the West Bengal Orthopedic Association webinar for the postgraduates, the postgraduate PG course. So my job is to start an examination of the pediatric foot and ankle. So my first slide is the disclosure. I want to thank Dr. Bibhudatta Sahu, my colleague who does exclusive pediatric orthopedic work. And most of the clinical photographs in this presentation, I borrowed from him for educational purposes. Objective of this presentation is the presentation will give you an overall idea about the different pediatric orthopedic foot and ankle conditions. And most of the time in your exams, it is a spot the diagnosis. And definitely it helps you to get a diagnosis in most of the times because deformity is what is most evident. And also it helps you to plan the treatment. If you go to classify the pediatric foot and ankle conditions, they are like any other part of the orthopedic examination. They are divided into the congenital, developmental, metabolic, infective, traumatic, tumors, and miscellaneous conditions where there is neuromuscular disorders like myopathies and cerebral palsies. Now here it is important for us to understand that what the mind knows, only that we are prepared to comprehend and see. So coming to the pediatric foot and ankle examination, let's try to approach it slightly differently. Now we have so many D's and some P's. So if you are considering about a deformity and deficiencies, most of the time it is picked up by our inspection. So we have to be very, very thorough in the history taking and the inspection. And most of the time, 50% of our clinical diagnosis comes by a proper history and a proper inspection. When it comes to any dislocated conditions or any discrepancies, any decrease in the joint mobility, paralysis, or any physical issues. So there, along with the inspection, we have to add our skills of palpation and movements and measurements. Now let's go to the one of the most commonest ones, that's the equinus deformity. So here is you see the first picture. Now this is a idiopathic tendoachilles tightness. And in the second one, if you see, it is a question with spasticity in a cerebral palsy child. So there's a tight spastic gastrosoleus muscle there. And in the third one, if you see, there is a swelling and which is shiny, and there is some calf abscess, and sometimes the pseudotumors of hemophilia also can present like this, and that leads to an ankle deformity. And for ankle is an equinus. And also in post-polio residual palsies and traumatic conditions, you can have such equinus deformities. And here, if you see, this is a picture of a 4-foot equinus, and here we have to differentiate it from a cavus deformity. So this is again a very important clinical point which you have to learn from deformities. Now coming to the most commonest one, the equinovarus deformities. Now, okay. So this is the most commonest, the congenital talipes equinovarus. Most of you will have it as a short case. So you have to know what are the tight, what are the structures which are contributing to the equinus, what are the tight structures, what are the structures which gives to the hand-foot varus, 4-foot adduction, and the 4-foot equinus of the cavus. So these are various structures which are tight and gives to this. Now coming to this clinical picture, if you see, you can see there is still existing some amount of equinus deformity. And this is a case of a relapsed CTB, where you can say the foot is definitely smaller compared to the other one. So that's again an important aspect of clinical examination in your inspection. When you see a deformity, you have to be very careful in noting the size of the foot also. Now here, there is a picture where in the first picture, it is basically a metatarsus adductus. And whereas here, the entire 4-foot is an adduction. So this is, you have to differentiate. So this is a 4-foot adduction in a congenital talipes equinovarus, whereas this is only a metatarsus adductus. And when it comes to congenital club foot, the underlying abnormalities are in the muscles and in the bones. Now you can have such type of varus and equinus foot in common peroneal nerve palsies because of muscle imbalance. And also in cerebral palsy, you can have equinovarus foots where because of the spasticity. Now let's go to the calcaneal deformity. Now this is calcaneal deformity is one of the most forgiving ones. They are usually not very tight deformities. There is a calcaneovalgus foot, and usually these are supple deformities. There's not much of muscle imbalance, so usually they are passively stretchable and correctable. And when there is some amount of rigidity, the contracture releases are at times required. And there are also various causes for acquired calcaneus deformity, which at times you have to go depending on the amount of deformity, osteotomies, and tendon transfers. And at times, when it is acquired calcaneus deformity in a slightly older child, and it's very tight, and sometimes we have to go for triple fusions also. Now let's go to the next common deformity, that is the cavus deformity. Now this cavus deformity is usually, if it is mild and there is not much of muscle imbalance, it's again a spotter. When you see, you have to differentiate it from a forefoot equinus. And usually this can be modified with shoe modifications. And again, when there are deformities are very tight and in older children, you have to go for triple fusions. Otherwise, muscle releases and some muscle, you have to know the exact diagnosis, and accordingly we can know for transfers or release. Now, the other common condition which is seen in your exam setting is a congenital vertical talus. So if you see here the classical rocker bottom foot, which is again here important to plan, is your lateral view x-rays, which is a must, and that only after that you can also plan your treatment there. So basically most of these deformities are spotters here, where seeing at the foot you have to plan your deformity. Now here, if you see, we'll go into a planovalgus foot. This is a very common deformity which you see, and this is basically a pes planus condition where because of the accessory navicular you see here, and here in peroneal spastic pes planus also you see there, and sometimes in tarsal coalescence also you can see a flat foot deformity. So again here, most of the time you reassure the parents and they encourage barefoot activity. In younger children this gets modified, unless they're like in older children, rarely, I mean, you have to plan for your insole arch and all. And in severe flat foot, painful, and you have to at times remove the painful flat foot, you have to tackle to the accessory naviculus. Otherwise, in older children, unacceptable and severe flat foot, at times you have to go for osteotomies. So valgus deformity of the ankle. Now here, if you see, this child has got there is a valgus at the ankle joint. So this child has got a fibular physeal defect for which there is a deformity of the ankle joint. Now here, if you see an ankle varus, now here it's a case where this child is having a loss of the fifth toe, which suggests an X-ray. There is a fibular hemimelia, and these are the cases where they also present with a valgus at the ankle joint. Now, here is a case of a post-infective case where there is a deformity of the ankle and there is a sequelae of septic arthritis and there is a varus ankle there. Metatarsus adductus and skew foot, these are also common deformities which you see as I show you in this picture. So here, the difference between the clubfoot correction and metatarsus adductus is in clubfoot, you have to have the pivot at the level of the talus, whereas in a metatarsus adductus, you have to do it at the calcaneocuboid joint, and you have to correct. Now, this is a primary metatarsus adductus. So you have to differentiate it from a varus foot and a cavovarus foot. Now, coming to the other deformities like forefoot and toe deformities, here is a case of a primary hallux valgus in a 12-year-old girl. She has nothing apart from hypothyroidism. She has no other condition, but here sometimes it is seen in metabolic bone conditions. Congenital hallux valgus can be seen. And here you see a hallux varus. It's a post-traumatic condition where there is a scar on the medial side leading to a hallux varus condition there. Now here you see there is a second left toe case where there is a length alteration in the length. It is a length discrepancy. So this is a macrodactyly here as you see. And sometimes again, you have to keep a note on these various callosities which develop in a spastic foot. So these callosities over because of the flexor spasms, they are seen in CP children. And when it comes to these multiple constriction bands, and sometimes this is leading to auto amputation of the disease, the digits. So these are also conditions which are basically spotters, and you have to identify these conditions just by looking at the cases. And these are cases where you see callosities. It's a CT of the child of the lateral aspect of the foot. Here it's a student sitting, and there is a lateral over bursitis over the lateral malleolus, and these are the conditions which are basically given in exams, and you have to spot this diagnosis. Now, tarsal coalitions, at times it can lead to also a flat foot and a planovalgus foot. And here, if you do the movement, if you compare to the normal side in tarsal coalitions, the movements are restricted at the midfoot level. So basically, when it comes to a deformity, and even in your examination sitting, you have to be, when you are able to provide the diagnosis, you would be asked very commonly the question that how do you decide? So basic, the treatment which is based on the deformity, the decision making is based on two important things. One is the natural history of this deformity. Now, if this deformity tends to resolve spontaneously, then you have to reassure and follow up these cases. Now, if this deformity tends to progress, then you have to suggest for early intervention to correct the deformity. Now, if the deformities, they are remaining static, then the decision to intervene is based on the consequences. What's the natural history? And then what happens if this deformity stays for long? Now, coming to the consequences of this deformity. Now, if this deformity which is there is only cosmetic and there is no other disability, you might not go for any intervention. And sometimes there is a cosmetically, these are unacceptable, but it causes no functional disability. Then you have to weigh the pros and cons of intervention. Now, when the deformities that cause are having disability, then obviously you have to go for intervention. And deformities that potentially lead to deleterious consequences, then you have to again intervene early in these cases. And deformities that can at times may be beneficial, which is a compensatory one. So avoid correcting these type of deformities. So that is how you have to answer once you get a case and you find able to establish a diagnosis. You are seeing the deformity, examine that, and you have to, what is whenever it comes to asking you, the examiner asks you about planning the treatment, you have to plan accordingly. And that are conditions where there is hyperlaxity. So here you see the reverse of the equinus deformity here. So there is a hyperdorsiflexion of the ankle, and there is generalized hyperlaxity in this girl. And infections, always you have to look for a scar somewhere. Whenever you see a foot or any part of the body, any scar, then you have to have the high index of suspicion for an infection. And again, swelling is very, very important as the deformity you have examined in your inspection. So swelling, you have to again note where exactly it is the site of the swelling. And usually it is because of any traumatic condition, inflammatory condition, infections, or any tumors. Now here, when it comes to a child and a history of trauma, the clinical examination is very important in traumatic child when the X-ray looks essentially normal, because here there might be some physeal injuries and or there is some perichondral ring injuries. So hence, you have to be very, very careful in the clinical history and examination where you have to find where exactly the point tenderness, and accordingly we have to treat these children. And the scars, again, it again suggests us about any post-traumatic history or post-infective history or post-surgical history. Now, coming to ulcers, when you have such like syndromic babies where there can be multiple joint involvement, and this is a meningomyelocele, and there is insensitivity to pain. So these, and sometimes even cerebral palsy children, they can, because of the chronic posturing, can develop ulcers. So you have to keep an eye on that and examine that, and what is the extent of the ulcer and depth of the ulcer. Now, apart from inspection, when it goes to palpation, again, you have to corroborate your findings, find out if there is local warmth suggestive of any infection, any localized tenderness, as in case of children, there might not be anything much evident in an X-rays, or any evidence of infection or any hemangiomas. And here, as you see in this child, there is a foreign body granuloma. So you have to be very careful in your palpatory skills also. And vascular assessment, as in all cases, you have to look for your anterior tibial, the posterior tibial, and the dorsalis pedis sensation. Neurological status evaluation is difficult to assess in children for the foot and ankle conditions, but you can check for the muscle contraction by stimulating different parts of the sole. And coming to the movements examination, they can be reduced, and the common causes for reduction are maybe because of any infection, trauma, and cerebral palsy. And if there is any contractures like amyotrophic, your arthrogryposis multiplex congenital, or spasticity or any septic sequelae. And as always, the examination of gait is very, very important in any case. So here we have to see if there is any tiptoeing walking, what are the different types of gaits, like crouching gait or jumping gait of in cerebral palsy, or the in-toeing gait is also very important in case of pediatric foot and ankle examination. And always you have to examine for the knee joint, the hip joint, examine the spine, and examine the upper extremities also. And last but not the least, whenever you are examining any foot and ankle case, you have to examine for the footwear also. So thank you for your attention, and my sincere gratitude to Dr. Vibhudatta Sahu, who has really helped me to get all the clinical pictures for this presentation.